If I were 30 again, I don't think I would try so hard to become someone else. When you're 30, the world feels very loud. Everyone has an opinion about who you should be, what your life should look like by now, how fast you should be moving, and what you should already have figured out. And you listen. Of course you do. I did too. I really believed that pressure meant progress. I believed that being tired meant I was doing something right, and that constant feeling of being behind, I thought that was just part of growing up. No one tells you that this feeling doesn't disappear on its own. You either stop and question it, or you carry it quietly for years, sometimes for decades. At 30, I believed life was something I had to assemble correctly. Like if I made the right choices in the right order, everything would eventually feel solid. I believed there was a version of my life waiting on the other side of effort, a calmer version, a safer version. So I rushed, through mornings, through conversations, through meals, even through rest. I treated the present like a hallway, not a place to stay, always moving toward something else. I'm not saying 30 is young, and I'm not saying it's old. I'm saying it's loud. Your head is full of voices that don't belong to you, yet somehow feel urgent. It takes time to learn which ones deserve your attention. My name is Samantha. I'm 88 years old now. That's long enough to notice something important. Some worries stay with you. Most of them don't. In my 30s, I thought everything mattered. Every decision felt permanent. Every mistake felt dangerous. I didn't realize that life keeps moving even when you choose imperfectly, even when you pause, even when you change direction. Back then, I was trying very hard to make sure nothing went wrong. I didn't understand how much energy that takes. Work became the center of my life, not because I loved it, but because it promised safety. If I worked harder, if I stayed longer, if I proved myself one more time, then maybe I could relax later. Later felt responsible. Later felt adult. Later felt earned. I told myself I was building something, that I was being patient, that once things settled, I would finally have time. They never really do. Work doesn't have a finish line. There is always another task, another goal, another version of just a little more. At the time, it felt reasonable to postpone things that mattered until life felt more stable. I believed there would be a better moment, a quieter season, a version of myself with more energy. Later became a very crowded place. I kept telling myself this isn't forever. Things will slow down soon. I'll be more present once I feel settled. But life doesn't slow down on its own. It keeps moving whether you are ready or not. What I didn't understand was that stability isn't something you reach. It's something you practice in the middle of uncertainty, not after it disappears. There's something else you begin to notice with time. People don't disappear suddenly. They fade. In my 30s, I thought relationships were flexible, that the important ones could survive neglect, that love could always be picked up where it was left. I assumed there would always be another call, another dinner, another weekend when things finally slowed down. But closeness doesn't work that way. Some of the people I loved most weren't lost because of conflict or distance. They were lost because of postponement. We stayed in touch just enough to believe everything was fine, just enough to avoid noticing what we were losing. Connection doesn't disappear loudly. It leaves quietly while you're busy believing there's still time. Your body tries to speak to you in your 30s, very softly. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It waits. I thought being tired was normal. Waking up already exhausted felt like part of being responsible. If something hurt, I worked around it. If I felt drained, I pushed through. I didn't think I was being careless. I thought I was being strong. What I didn't realize was that the body remembers everything, even when the mind is busy pretending everything is fine. The signs were small at first, nothing dramatic, just enough to ask for honesty. I kept telling myself I would listen later, after this busy season, after things calm down. They rarely do. Stress didn't arrive as panic. It arrived as responsibility. I believed that worrying meant I cared, that staying tense meant I was prepared, that control was a form of protection for my work, for my family, for my future. But control is exhausting, and it doesn't make life safer. I carried tension in places I didn't notice at the time, in my shoulders, in my jaw, in the way my thoughts never slowed down, even at night. I planned conversations before they happened. I replayed them afterward. I worried about outcomes I couldn't influence. Peace doesn't come from holding everything tightly. It comes from learning what doesn't belong in your hands. If I were 30 again, I wouldn't try to redesign my entire life. I wouldn't search for the perfect balance or the right formula. I spent too many years believing that if I just adjusted enough things, everything would finally feel right. What I know now is that life rarely changes all at once. It shifts quietly when you stop pushing against it. I would allow myself to move slower, even when everything around me seemed to rush. Not to fall behind, but to stay connected to where I actually was. Speed never brought me clarity. Attention did. I used to think energy was something you could stretch indefinitely, that rest was a reward, something you earned after everything important was finished. But nothing is ever finished. If I were 30 again, I would protect my energy more carefully, not by doing less, but by choosing better. Better conversations, better silences, better reasons to say yes. I would stop treating exhaustion like proof of commitment, because being constantly drained doesn't mean you're living fully. It often means you're not listening to yourself at all. There are things I spent years trying to fix, trying to perfect, trying to resolve completely. I thought every loose end was a failure. Now I understand something different. Not everything needs to be finished. Not every question needs an answer. Not every moment needs improvement. Some things resolve themselves once you stop pulling at them. If I were 30 again, I would let certain chapters remain open a little longer, without rushing to close them just to feel in control. What mattered most in the end wasn't how much I achieved. It was how often I noticed the day I was actually living, instead of the one I was planning. I spent years preparing for life, planning it, organizing it, trying to make it safe. I didn't realize that life was already happening in the middle of all that preparation. Lightness doesn't arrive later. It's something you allow into ordinary days. Presence is not a skill you master. It's a choice you make, again and again. There's something else I understand now, standing on this side of life. You don't wake up one morning feeling like you've finally arrived. There's no clear line where everything suddenly makes sense. What does change is the way you carry things. The worries that once felt urgent lose their weight. The questions that kept you awake quiet down. You stop asking every year to justify itself. You stop demanding answers from every choice you make. Meaning isn't something you discover all at once. It forms slowly when you pay attention long enough to the life you're actually living. At 30, I thought clarity came from choosing correctly, from avoiding mistakes, from getting ahead of uncertainty. Now I know clarity comes from staying present, especially when things are unclear. If I could sit across from my younger self, I wouldn't warn her about failure. I wouldn't tell her what to avoid. I would tell her this: don't rush past the years that are trying to shape you. Don't postpone your life waiting for a version of yourself that feels finished. You don't need to become someone else to deserve peace. You don't need to have everything figured out to live well. Life isn't something you prepare for and then begin. It's already happening, right here, in the middle of the questions, in the middle of who you are right now. If I were 30 again, I wouldn't try to outrun time. I would walk with it.